Lenses are important. They're kind of like paintbrushes, except we use them to decorate time and not space. Our job as filmmakers is to bend light in a way that tells a story, which is pretty cool if you think about it. Our chosen mode of bending said light is through the use of optics, and with any luck, those optics are lodged inside a solid housing. In best case scenario, the light bends in a way that is beautiful. My wife is beautiful. That's an objective fact. Lenses, on the other hand, can only hope to achieve a different kind of beauty. A subjective beauty. Subjective because maybe there's a lens that I admire, but you wouldn't, and vice versa, of course. Taste can change over time, and I think that's totally okay. Every project has its own flavor, but what never goes out of style is a clean standard prime. A lens with a solid housing, a solid look, the correct lens mount, and a good price point is hard to beat, and will always be hard to beat. Even with all the competition these days, the community has picked a darling in this category. And honestly, I can totally see why. Let's start with the housing. I like the way these things feel. They're really, really small, they feel dense, tolerances are tight, the texturing on the metal is cool, and I'm not worried about them breaking. The focus and iris ring are well dampened, not too tight or too loose, just right, even for pulling focus by hand. Size and weight is pretty similar between all the lenses too, which is really nice. That means less rebalancing and moving follow focuses up and down your rods all day. Speaking of focal lengths, there's a lot of these suckers. In this set, I have a 14, an 18, a 25, a 35, a 40, a 50, an 85, and a 135. My two favorite focal lengths on Super 35 are 28 and 50 millimeter. I use the 28, or 25 in this case, for a more natural field of view for anything I want to feel a little bit more intimate. And then everything else goes to the 50 because it's more observational. Chances are you're going to see me using these two focal lengths way more than the others. Another thing to keep in mind, Super 35 is my favorite, so we're not going to be shooting on a full frame sensor. Depending on who you are, that might be disappointing, but take heart, the good news is we get to throw these bad boys on the Alexa. Okay, so the way that I normally make these videos is I pick a topic. If it's a camera, it's a lens, whatever it is. I do as much research as I possibly can, and then I write the first draft of my script right then for the video. I treat it like a hypothesis. There's a bunch of opinions that I've drawn from my taste, from what people are saying online, that might not necessarily be true because I haven't actually used the product yet. It's like a hypothesis. And then later I will get the product. Once I have it in my hand, then I will test it as much as I can, put them up against my initial hypothesis and use it to rewrite and then get the final screenplay. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is because in the research phase of this video, I'm looking at what everybody's saying about the Athenas online, and I'm hearing things like sharp, they're super clean. I keep hearing the word clean, and everybody's taste in lenses is different. I tend to gravitate towards the kind of funkier lenses. So whenever I hear the word clean, initially I'm like, oh, these lenses are gonna be boring, and I wasn't super excited about them. What nobody told me is how much sauce these things have. Here's the thing, we're only gonna look at this one shot right now, so I can kind of try and articulate my feelings. When you have a lens that is overly corrected, backgrounds render in a way such that they kind of look like a green screen sitting behind the subject. There's a lot of separation. The foreground element that's being focused on will pop a lot more, which I think is probably a really good thing in photography. In motion picture, I think it's really important, at least in the kind of images I gravitate towards, the kind of images that I like. I like that sense of space, that sense of 3D depth, and a lot of times that super duper sharp transition from in focus to out of focus is a little bit jarring. Again, it kind of looks like somebody standing in front of a green screen, or whatever the subject is sitting in front of a green screen. So ideally, I'm looking for whatever's being focused on in the foreground, and then a smooth transition to the background. And then another thing is I don't really like smooth bokeh, perfectly round bokeh, or undercorrected spherical aberration. I like overcorrected, which is like that soap bubble look. So between those two things, you have the gentle transition from in focus to out of focus, and then having a little bit more shape to the background. It can communicate depth a little bit better. Going into these tests, I was thinking that these would render exactly like a photography lens, and that the benefit of buying the NiSi Athenas would be that you would just have highly corrected clean optics, but they're housed in a cinema body. But turns out it's a really nice cinema body that also renders a beautiful deep image. I love testing with trees because they're so complex. There's so many details. There's a lot of highlight sneaking through, and you can really stress test a lens. And this is with the Alexa, so this is in full HD. It's looking plenty sharp. But when we follow let's pick a branch here. So this one right here is poking directly at us. Critical focus is right around right here. And if you follow it, it's razor sharp in focus, and then a little bit out, and then starting to blur a little bit, and then it gets lost underneath this other branch. But the point is, it's not like this part right here is in focus, and then right here it's like bam and completely out of focus, and that's where the green screen line is right there. It transitions really smoothly, and this is just beautiful. I mean, look at this. We can go down here, and here's some of that overcorrected spherical aberration creating that sharper edge around the bokeh. I love that. That's what communicates that shaped in the background. Maybe you don't like this, maybe you like smoother bokeh, that's totally okay. But I think this image is so beautiful of this tree. It's so interesting and painterly. Axial chromatic aberration is hard to find on the Athena primes, which is good because I usually like to keep that at a minimum if possible. Loca is barely present and very well controlled. So if chromatic aberration is the bane of your existence, you could do much worse than the Athena primes. They're also tack sharp and even gain a little bit more sharpness once stopped down. Oh, and by the way, I forgot to mention, all these lenses open up to T1.9 with few exceptions, which is pretty dang fast. You should be able to gather plenty of light for less than ideal scenarios. Flaring is very well controlled. Subjectively, I wish they were funkier, but if you're buying these lenses to give you predictable and controlled results, you're in the right place. Also, distortion isn't distracting. I know I'm not shooting on a large format sensor, so this isn't a perfect test, but even on a wider focal length, I don't think it was bad at all. I really don't have much more to say. These lenses are every bit as solid as everyone makes them sound, and actually a lot better than I was expecting. If it's the right look for you, then I think you should rent them and give it a try. If you're happy after renting them, then you should pick up a couple. If you decide to pick up the Athena primes, I wish you the best. Have fun shooting, Godspeed, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.